while becoming better leaders and better managers in their life. A lot of these people are very smart, driven, high achievers, and that can become a challenge. The balance between ambition and taking care of yourself and becoming a better leader, and technical versus non-technical abilities that is required to grow in an organization. So Sepideh and I go way back. We are friends. And Sepideh is one of the few people that I know that is really an engineer, real engineer, I should say, because a lot of times I am an engineer by training, but I'm not always into measuring and figuring out how things work. That's beyond me. But Sepideh has always been a real engineer, always doing projects, making something, and really using the engineering mind, which has always amazed me. But as some of you might know, or some of you that don't know, I would like to introduce her because she has wonderful experience going up from technical, being a technical person into other ranks and leveling up to the senior technical program manager. And she has the experience of being in manufacturing environments and big corporations like Nokia and Amazon. Each corporation, depending on their size, can have different cultures, can have different nuances when it comes to leveling up, when it comes to leadership. And I see it all the time as a challenge for people, especially if they are in a smaller company that is bought by a bigger company. They are forced to move. How do I adjust? How do I level up? How do I grow? How do I change from a senior manager to a director to a VP? This is always challenging. So when we had a chat last week, and Sepideh and I really had a good chat about leadership skills, I jumped on the opportunity and said, "Hey, why don't you come and we have a chat about what leadership looks like in action from a leader who has lived, breathed, and been in these amazing organizations for, what should I say, more than a decade?" You're muted. Sepideh, you need to unmute.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was trying not to make over talk over Europe, but yes, more like 2 decades. So we're out aging ourselves.
Well, that's part of leadership. It happens with experience. So, Sepideh, I want you to say a few words about your experience. I introduced you from my view and what I know from you.
Sure. Thanks for this opportunity, Kathy. I think it's a great avenue of information you provide for people. And based on our conversation, yes, I'm happy to share some of my experience with your team. So, as Kathy introduced me, I'm Sepideh. Yes, my background, I studied industrial engineering and then worked many years in manufacturing engineering. So, very, I would say, hardcore technical and more hands-on versus as through my career I grew, I learned the best way to adapt and grow my career is not necessarily be the best in the field or have the competency of my job, but also be adaptable to positions and actually grow and learn from every position I had to like market myself differently. So the reason I highlight this very particular skill set, I think it's very important, is that this opened a lot of doors by looking that way through how you can adapt, and also led me to become into more program management, because once you understand the technical ability of okay how things works, now it's all about execution and how you create new ideas. And if you can leverage your technical knowledge and grow yourself in this avenue of program management, and later on, of course, because of my technical background, I specifically, I guess, excelled in the technical program management, which requires engineering degree, helped me a lot in my career, both in, Amazon, Nokia, and even prior to that at Denso. So, which was very, very beneficial. And I'm still growing, and I think I'm still adjusting. And I think throughout today's discussion, hopefully we get a chance to talk about some of these leadership skills or viewpoints or assessments we should all do with our own capabilities in order to excel.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that word adaptability that you brought because I think
Yeah.
that's what the world has experienced in 2019. Haven't we all? We have all experienced. We had to adapt to a lot of things during the pandemic. 2020, I should say. Sorry, I said 19. But yeah, during the pandemic, we all had to adapt. That's part of life. And life becomes hard when we don't have that capability. We're going to talk about that. But thank you for that introduction. And for our audience, just to know so that they can adjust themselves, we're going to talk about half an hour. It's going to be like this, like a dialogue with Sepideh, talking about the leadership and what we want to bring to the table. And after that, we open up to the question. Whatever questions come to you, or maybe you want to share from your own experiences. That would be another thing that we are all interested to learn from you, because I always tell people leadership is experiential. It does not happen in silo. It does not happen by reading books. I mean, you cannot see my background. I have all these books, but books do not do justice to the experience. And the beauty of this thing is that people can learn. They don't have to invent the wheel. They can just learn from other people's experiences. What works, what doesn't work. So, with that said, I'm going to start by asking you, Sepideh, to share with us some of the tools that a lot of organizations, regardless if they are technical or non-technical or any industry, some tools that organizations use to help their leaders, to help the talent, I should say, to increase their performance and their effectiveness. And a lot of companies bring personality tests. For some people, is a torture, a day of torture or a week of torture, depending how they look at it. And for some people, it's like, oh my God, this is amazing. These are so good. I learned so much about myself. There are very different viewpoints about it, depending
Mhm.
on how busy people are or how interesting psychology or knowing themselves is for them. So I want to ask you about your experience with these tools and assessments. What is your experience?
Sure. I'll be happy to share some of my experience. And I'm sure you can add on based on your own expertise because you're probably more aware of some of these tools. I'll name a couple and then I'll be happy to maybe discuss based on my experience and what we used it for and how it worked. As you mentioned, personality test, Myers-Briggs is one that's very well known in the industry. It highlights your personality based on series of questions. I won't go to details of it. I'm sure you will have a session someday to have further details about all these kinds of assessment tests. But basically, it highlights your how you think, how you communicate. Like it could be an extrovert versus introvert,
Mm-hmm.
or data-driven versus intuition, and so forth. And then there's another one that I've through my career I've come across in our industry that we've used was Strength Finder 2.0. And that actually was another tool that through one of my departments, one of our executives had us actually took those tests. And then we all discussed how our strength of our team is based on that.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically highlighting your individual strengths based on your personality and how in decision makings you perform. So I'm happy to actually at any time, if you want to mention any other assessment tools that you're familiar with, go ahead. And then I'll be happy to share some of the experience we had with these tools in my career.
Of course. Yes, there is no shortage of tools in this area.
Yes.
Uh, I think all the major companies have assessments. Some of them, the only thing that I think is important here to mention, because we don't want to go into details of these things,
Yes. Yes.
the only thing that is important is that for a leader, personality assessment is important, but the more important thing is competency assessments, because leadership, part of it is about how you are being viewed by your peers,
Mm-hmm.
by your subordinates, by the bosses above you. That is what helps you level up in an organization and own your impact and influence. So just drawing attention to the fact that there is this distinction that might be useful. But other than that, I think we can continue the conversation with
Sure.
Myers-Briggs. That was the first one I did kind of 20, maybe, I don't know, 18, 17 years ago, when I was working for a semiconductor manufacturing company. I did Myers-Briggs too, and I was so excited. I was thinking, oh my God, how do they know all these things about me? As if, I'm the only person doing it in the world. It's a good feeling. But I'm very curious. if you can share with our audience in here, how did you utilize it? How was it
Mhm.
beneficial to you in the work that you did?
Yeah, definitely. Myers-Briggs was the first one also that I've come across in my career as well. And to be honest with you, being an engineer, I wasn't a very strong believer in this assessments. You go along because, of course, the team or the organization is encouraging you to do so forth. But I think through the process, actually, I learned a lot. Why the assessment? The more I studied about how the results came about me specifically. One of the also classes I took at UCSD at one time, it was focusing on maximizing, managing for maximizing performance, which again, they use Myers-Briggs and also we evaluate how our personalities does. I'll give a very good example on this, so maybe people and audience can relate. As a typical engineer, usually we're not extroverts. I happen to be one of the few who's a very extroverted, and it showed on the Myers-Briggs test that I was very highly extroverted. Majority of the engineers, they're very introverted. So I like to actually, just as a very simple extrovert, introvert, a lot of people think it means you're quiet or you're talkative. And I think it's actually a wrong viewpoint of this assessment, mainly because through this assessment, what you learn is extrovert people actually share ideas by throwing it out there. The reason I'm highlighting, because this is very important in leadership and managing your team, versus introvert people, they analyze the solutions internally and then they share one or two options.
Mm-hmm.
By understanding this difference for me individual, as an individual contributor, I thought it was very interesting because as an extrovert, I would be in a team and I would just throw ideas when a problem comes, right?
Right.
Versus an introvert person would feel a little bit timid to over talk my ideas or over suggest. So they basically get kind of pushed on this quiet section, or they cannot be able to, as a team member, share their ideas. So as an individual, I should be aware of my communication based on the personality I have. And in order to provide more of a cohesiveness and team player, I think it will be good to consider that I kind of step back a little bit and encourage our team members. Now, this was from an individual contributor perspective. Now, as a manager, where if they know that there is a team member like me who's extroverted versus an introvert person, how should they use this personality test? And I think these are where the key. A lot of organizations provide personality tests, but beyond that point of identifying your personality, nobody takes it for leadership. So, as a manager, what they should do, for example, if a problem comes up, what happens in our situation, a manager would provide or define the problem that we're having, have a meeting. Well, instead of saying, okay, what are the solutions as a team we're thinking, they should say, okay, here's the situation. Hold your thoughts, come back in an hour. Let's meet after lunch in the afternoon. And then let's reassess the situation and share what your inputs are as a team. What we learned through this process is by providing that extra hour, an introvert person had a chance to process the information and actually through their selection in their mind come up with a solution. And so when we met an hour later, you would find actually a lot of people who usually do not feel comfortable to share in a meeting.
Mm-hmm.
They had great ideas. So this is where these tools in a leadership methodology at work can be very beneficial in order to be enhancing the efficiency or effectiveness of your team, because you actually are providing an environment where everybody can actually contribute and share their ideas.
Right.
So I think that's an
Absolutely.
example that I've seen in my career that has helped a lot with these personality tests.
I love that example, especially in engineering field. I have somebody waiting for us. Let's make sure that they can join. Especially in the engineering world, getting people to participate, to talk, to get solutions out of them, that is a huge success. To make sure that you can get to the brain of these people. So I love what you said. It's a hard one for managers to balance with individual contributors, especially the talent that they have in their teams. So this is a good segue for us to go and look at the Strengths Finder. Strengths Finder, actually, I love personally, that particular assessment, that had a big role in my life when I discovered Marcus Buckingham's book. And the stress minder, I was with DirecTV, and DirecTV, as part of the initiative that they had for developing fearless leaders in IT,
Mhm.
and they had this agreement that we all read the book and we all do the assessment. And I tried to design my next performance review or whatever path or whatever
Mhm.
career path or whatever it was at that time, based on what I found in that report, which the first one said my first strength was advisor. And I went and made some suggestions around the organization based on the fact that StrengthsFinder said I'm an advisor. So I should be
Yes.
advising the whole universe, kind of. Um, but yeah, that really shaped me, shaped my future later on, especially when I was changing my path, my professional path. The fact that it had told me that I'm an advisor felt like, wow, this is the real, this
And
is
you are in
the
the
next.
right career for
Exactly.
that.
But imagine
Yeah.
I had to spend 2 decades, almost a decade and a half, in something less advisory as this. So that was an interesting thing. So I want to hear, how was that for you? How did you use that in your work?
Sure. Actually, I wasn't familiar with it either until, yes, one of my leadership teams actually encouraged us to take it. Similar to you, I was curious to see actually what the Strength Finder tells me. And actually, mine ended up to be one of the, they show you the top 5. And I think most of my top 5 was about team building, encouraging teams to do things and so forth, which is very different than a typical, again, as you said, an engineer background I would have. I was hoping they would have very data driven, very hardcore, but it wasn't. So, which was fine because I think it has helped me a lot on my program management skills. So I'll give you a very example again. You brought up very good assessment that how we can use this specific strength finder, for example, another tool of leadership. So in this case, I'll give you one example. I was in a group of 5 technical program managers. So our manager did a great job. We all took this test, and we actually graphed it and talked about how we all scored and what are our strengths. There are a couple of things that stood out. I'll like to share one from the manager perspective first, and then I'll share from the individual contributor how this tool will help in a leadership. When we categorized it, actually one of these results shows like where people as a team, our strengths are. So some of us, ranked really high as an executor, and some of us more as a new thinker or big thinker.
Yeah.
One thing that our manager highlighted between 5 of us, of course we were distributed our strengths, but the funny thing was that between 5 of us, none of us was the strategist. So it became a really interesting thing because my manager said, hey, the next person we hire in the team probably needs to be a strategist. So I'm just saying, besides just looking into the data, how we can interact is one of those things to find the gap in the team and where our team can be stronger. But I like to build on that because going back again on executor versus a new, and big thinker, I always, in these assessments, one of the highest scores I had, and actually my reviews always was a big thinker. As a program manager, you also need to be a good executor, and of course, completing the project is important. But based on my personality, I find that I actually lose sometimes interest as the project actually continues because there's no innovation anymore. A lot of new innovations and big thinking and planning is early on, usually in a project.
Right.
However, one of my colleagues who actually scored very high as a individualism, he actually was a great executor. And if I wanted to look at it in an individual country as a team player, I could see where him and our view of projects is very different because my strengths are all about team, encouraging the teams, and his strength is about individualism, right? So that showed a lot about me understanding my colleague and where maybe our cohesiveness in planning and driving stuff may differ. But also, I think from a manager perspective, as you said, for leadership, it's also a great tool because a manager could have looked at this and say, hey, instead of like give these two individual program managers two different projects, what if I use their strengths to actually enhance our team's effectiveness? Let's say Sepideh is great big thinker, so in the beginning of a project, she'll be the one leading the project. And then when it gets to execution, maybe I give it to this other colleague who actually is a great executor and can actually, take the project and excel with it, right?
Right.
So I think those are the tools that, besides just actually taking the test, because as you said, a lot of people take the test and basically goes in the drawer with the results. So I think we have an ability as a leadership enhancement, leadership skills and enhancing our team effectiveness to take these rules and say, hey, what can we do with them, right? How do we improve our team? How do we open the doors for ourselves or our team to actually do better in the leadership position or actually in the projects that we work on?
I love this because this is actually using these assessments and tools for building awareness, building
Mm-hmm,
self-awareness, becoming aware of what is it about me that I'm good and what do I want to do. So a lot of the unhappiness that I see people experience is because they feel stuck. And feeling stuck is because they are doing something that is not in line with what their strength is or what their passion is. They have the talent, they have the ambition, but it is not positioned properly. That's how
mm-hmm.
organizations lose talent. So, with this, I am going to take a segue into your own journey with awareness, with self awareness, and maybe communication as a result of that. What comes up to you when we look at it that way, Sepideh?
I'm glad we're going that journey, because I think one of the things I've also learned, part of my I guess career, that communication more than anything than a technical competency is what actually helps you lead. And I think communication is the key. We can actually explore further on that. But one good example of that, and in a previous job, I was working with a lot of mechanical design engineers. I'll give you an example on that. Maybe other people can relate. In my position, I was questioning a design engineer, which I've worked many times before, questioning the design. So looking at a drawing, I actually specifically asked, hey, could you, why did you design it this way? Because I was having some concerns about the design and the quality once it comes to manufacturing. My colleague very professionally actually answered my question, but from his body language and facial expression, I could tell he became hesitant. He paused and he answered.
Mm.
The reason I highlight this, I noticed this. I had just come out of a leadership coaching class, actually. So
Oh.
I was very, 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 sensitive to pay attention to these clues. Give that feedback to my coach. I said, hey, I asked this question, why did you design this way? My colleague answered me, but I'm kind of worried now next time he might not, because I kind of felt like his impression changed. And my coach, the first thing she shared with me said, take the why out of your vocabulary. And I was surprised by that, because I'm like, how else do you ask this question? Why do you design something like this? She said, when you say why to anything or anybody, the defense mechanism of walls goes up, right? So people become defensive to share. They're wondering where you're going with that question. If you had rewarded this question, and I've tried to in my communication since then to pay attention, had said, could you walk me through your thought process? The person would have been so open. They wouldn't be hesitant. They won't be defensive. They won't be questioning what your intentions are. And I think these are the communication skills that, as we all learn and grow in our leadership skills, we need to pick up and be aware of these non or verbal, I should say, or even verbal communication, that it could be so innocently said, but it actually closes doors. And this awareness actually has helped me a lot. One thing else I want to also add, even through our today's discussion, some of us, we get so excited a subject, or we want to share an idea in a leadership, or we think it's a good strategy and so forth to go. I have a habit of when I get excited about an idea or topic, I actually share one after another and one after another. I'm sure a lot of our team here listening does the same thing because I'm just so excited. Let's execute. Let me tell you this and let me tell you this. Same feedback, same awareness from the communication from the same coach has come. Between every idea you ever present as a leader, you should pause 7 seconds. Now, I don't know, maybe there are other studies about how long you should really wait. But 7 seconds, according to the coach that I had, was you share an idea in a meeting, pause 7 seconds, give people a chance to take it in before you share your second idea or third idea and continue. Because you'll get more support in this kind of practice and awareness of your own communication. For me, as an extrovert, 7 seconds is a lifetime. But I think we've all learned that as we continue in our career to become more aware of this kind of communication and how we can actually have people more open to our ideas and listening and guide us through.
Hmm. Uh, this is a very, very, very touchy subject, communications. I
Mm-hmm.
can see all the time people are like, how can I become a better communicator? How can I become a better communicator? Especially when there is conflict. How can
Yes.
I say no? How can I set boundaries? How can I not be a people pleaser? These are all different nuances of communications. But what you said about the pause, it is a very true fact. A lot of times when we are having workshops, it is important to look to see who raises their hands all the time and who are the quiet
Mm-hmm.
people that you have to go and poke them so that you can hear what is going on in them. Um, I personally was not very aware of it. That I come from the background. I grew up in Iran, and I come from the background that if you're a good student, the moment they ask you a question, you raise your hand. And I always carried that in me, in all the meetings and all of that that I went in the corporate world. I was thinking that it's a competition. The person who has the most number of ideas, or talks sooner than everybody else, is the winner, which later on I learned, and this is why I'm bringing it up for our audience listening to us, is that that's actually in contrast to building executive presence.
Mm-hmm.
Because part of building an executive mind is the ability to deliberate on the ideas, on thoughts, and really chew before you speak. That's an important thing. Now, to the 7 seconds rule, I came up with a trick for my folks because a lot of my work is about how we can build the pause button in people, and that is take 3 breaths. Take three
Mm,
breaths.
that's a good
Especially when it is a position, a situation that you're presented with something that might be unpleasant to you, or you feel it is unpleasant, or you feel you're caught off guard and you're about to blurt out something. I actually had a very good case this week, and my coachee came and said, she's a team lead with a technical team, and she came and said, I feel attacked. And I'm like,
one.
okay. And she said, because the mandate from my organization is that people need to come back to work at least 3 days a week, starting June 21st. And my
Mm.
boss has told me, your performance and your bonus this year is tied to how your team is going to do this mandate. And she said that the moment he said that, I started going on this, oh, this is unfair to me. Why are you doing this to me? Blah, 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 without looking at it from the perspective of the organization. The organization, you had a contract before this pandemic to work for this organization in person. You have to go back and look at the contract before you object to that. So we had a lengthy conversation, and she kind of, not lengthy, I should say, actually quick conversation in terms of the thing, before she changed, and she said, I think I shouldn't have said the things I said.
Hmm.
She got emotionally charged. So whenever we are emotionally charged, it is very important to build that habit of three breaths. In your case, is having ideas, and in some
Yeah.
most cases in the leadership is when we are emotionally charged with the subject. We need that even more to make sure we don't say something that we regret. So this is a big thing in the communications, and I'm so glad that you brought it up, Sepideh. But as we go on, and I'm very thankful for you coming and having this
Thank you.
with us today. I realize that you have left Amazon, right? And you have landed on a new gig. So I want to understand from a leader moving from one organization to another organization, what has your experience been like? I know a lot of people are afraid of losing their technical edge when they are becoming
Yeah.
leaders, going off the ladder. How do I find another job as quickly as a technical person? I want to ask you if you can share with us what your experience has been like with your decisions, with your moving.
Sure. I actually, before explaining that, I want to highlight something that, in general, depending wherever you work, whether in your previous company and you're moving to a new company, of
Mhm,
course, your previous company, you have some knowledge of what the leadership expectations are for the company. Those are the things I think in any company you are, current company, will
mhm,
help you succeed. Understanding those leadership principles. Now, of course, when you go to a new job, looking for a new job, you're not familiar with that company. Of course, there's always research you can do. But in my experience has been the legacy that you leave behind from your network or previous company or colleagues has always helped me actually, I would say, perform better in my next job. In many cases, yes, it actually in many cases has always been a reference that has actually opened a lot of opportunities for interviews from existing colleagues or previous colleagues. That's one thing.
mhm,
And in many cases, in throughout the interviews, actually what I found out that it wasn't just a competency that you present for the specific position that you're applying for, but it's also how you communicate. So
mhm,
it's the relationships you've built in the past, and also that reference just opens the door. What you do in the interview, it's really how you communicate. And in many cases, you might not have the exact, I would say, experience to do a position. I'll give you a very simple example. In many cases, whether I was at Amazon or other positions, many people actually interview, but it's more than just the competency of, let's say, if you have software knowledge, or if you have a design knowledge, or if you have a hardware knowledge. It's more also, of course, they want you to be able to do the job, but it's also, can you adapt? Can you learn? And can you change? And
mhm,
in the new positions that I've had an opportunity, the references, of course, helped open the door, but it was more communication, and it's more as far as how you deliberately or can actually express how you can adjust to a new position, how you can learn new things that opens the door.
okay.
Sometimes in my situations, that has helped me land a position or a job over even somebody who had experience and had a was a returning client, or some, or let's say a employee from the company,
Mhm,
and has opened a lot of doors. And I think it's how you market yourself, how you present. And I'm kind of rambling on a little bit, but one of the things I think I've learned in my previous company is the leadership principles, for example, Amazon has opened a lot of skill sets and knowledge for me how to actually communicate for my next future jobs. And not to go through their principles, but there are great things that you learn how you actually should feel confident to present where you think it's the right information and so forth. So I think that's the key part of that to land a new job. Yeah.
amazing. I really like what you highlighted here. I think everybody can use that in their lives, not just job interview or job mobility, anything
Yes.
you can in life. Adjusting and adaptability.
Yes.
Um, they sound simple, but unless somebody has built that flexibility in their brain, it is actually a very hard thing to adjust to. And I love the fact that you're bringing it up in here so people can look into themselves and really be sit and ask yourself, am I rigid or am I
Yeah.
adaptable? Do I have the flexibility in my brain and mind, or am I suffering from my own rigidity? This is just an introspection that I think all of us can do as past this session and sit with ourselves. And if the answer is that we need work, then we need to do the work to reap the benefits of it. I really thank you, Sepideh. I think this has been super beneficial for people who were present with us and people who will watch this as a replay. And we have 20 minutes left on from the time we had allocated. So let's open up to questions, see what questions people have, or if they want to share from their experiences, that would be fantastic too. So let's open it to the audience, shall we?
I do have a question for Mrs. Karimi, if I may.
Sure.
Uh, uh, with these all different personality types and all of that, it seems that there is going to be disagreement at some point. It's inevitable because yes, we have all these principles, and but we still have different personalities and different views and all of that. So my question to you is, how do you handle disagreement between team members? And what are some of the principles you have learned throughout your career that help you navigate this situation so that you can have uh, a team that is functioning uh, despite the disagreement? Thank
Is that for me? I guess I'll
you.
answer
Yes,
that.
it's for you. I said Mrs. Karimi.
Okay. So yeah, I'm sure there's, conflict negotiations and many skills that a lot of people and leaders will have in place, and they get trained on that. In my particular situation, personalities, what will happen is one, the assessment of understanding the difference that you have in your personality with maybe the colleagues or whoever you're actually um, I guess having the conflict with that kind of, as we just discussed, understanding what they're looking into to have as far as feedback. And also, I think it's, and maybe Kathy can actually add to this, it's in program management, you do this a lot actually. It's understanding of when you approach a team for actually delivering or so forth, it's more as far as, it's more like you reach out to them understanding where they come from, so what their needs are, and actually sitting back and listening what the needs are, what are the things that they're looking for, and then you can actually share where can you meet halfway. And those are the things that at least in my particular situation has helped out. Kathy, maybe you might want to add a little bit more.
The only thing that comes to me is the art of listening. That is in line with a lot of things that was discussed today too. Um, there is always an urge to share, to prove oneself, because in organizations, people who talk, they feel like they are proving themselves. So, especially with a new team, being able to sit, listen, allow them to trust is a very, very important subject. Which we are talking about active listening here, which is different from the listening of that we might use in our daily life, because we hear a lot of things in our organizations, in our meetings, even in the Zoom. But active listening is allowing ourselves to be fully present with these people. And believe it or not, people feel that. People feel when somebody is distracted or is on the phone, even if we are not in the organization, or somebody is present with them. And how do we build that? In ourselves. We build it on ourselves. How else can we build being focused and attentive? So that's where the work goes to us. And always I say, leadership is based on you. who you are as a person is who you are as a leader, because a lot of it is how you build things in yourself. So I hope this helps, Mustafa. Thank you for asking that question.
Great answers.
Yeah, actually, I just thought of something that we in one of my companies actually is one of the principles. So I think thanks for sharing that, Kathy. And it might help some people as well. Is it was actually they had a principle called disagree and commit. So you can actually voice in a meeting, share your concerns for a decision that's being made. However, once a decision is made as a company or as a group or whoever is the executor in that team, you can still say, hey, I still disagree, but I commit to this decision. Because as you highlighted earlier, like similar example to your friend, it's the company's success is important. And as a team, we should all be on the same, I would say, vision to move forward. Now, you should have the strength to share. That's why you're hired, to share your expertise. And actually, but once the decision's made, what we had a leadership principle called disagree and commit. And I think even in my personal life, have used it a lot, because you can actually say, I disagree, but I commit to support this and move forward. And I think as a team and as a leader, that's actually great skills to have.
Thank you, Mr. Karimi. That's wonderful.
That is absolutely wonderful. That little thing that you added, that makes a lot of difference, to acknowledge that and move on. Thank you. So, what other burning questions, experiences you guys want to share? Leslie, do you want to share with us?
Sorry, we could not hear you until just 2 seconds ago. Can you repeat the question?
Oh, we have opened up the floor to any questions or sharing experiences. So I was thinking, do you have something you want to share?
Sorry, she's feeding our dog. Anything to share? I guess I'm pinch hitting here.
I don't want to put you on the spot. I just thought that you have something to say. So
No, let me pass for this moment.
absolutely, absolutely, of course.
No problem.
Anything else, folks, before we bring our session to an end? Questions, experiences? I think that's about it then. Sepideh, do you have any last words that you want to share before we wrap it up?
I think we covered a lot of things, of course, that for the time period, hopefully that gave people a chance. One thing I wanted to just maybe as part of our wrap up to discuss with our audience is a lot of times in leadership, or even some of us who are looking for opportunities you highlighted, or want to get promoted and get to the next level, we're constantly focusing on why the door is not open, why like somebody would not give you the opportunity and so forth. One of the things that in my career I've looked at is it's not their job to open the door, it's your job to open the door. And I think if you always look at that their job is to actually have all these closed doors in front of you, and it's you and your responsibility to find the right key to open the door. So if one avenue of your approach is not working, this is one of the things that I think we all can assess and learn and become better leaders, even in our own career, is how do we open this door for ourselves to do better, to excel better, to lead better, to manage better our team and so forth, or even improve our own skills in leadership. And I think that's the key that all of us can focus on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's as Mustafa is, I'm joining you, Mustafa, for that. Thank you for starting that. Absolutely. Folks, this was a beautiful ending to our night and session today. If you see you are not being promoted, you are not getting where you're going, look in the mirror. Pointing fingers. Oh, this boss doesn't like me. This company doesn't like me. People are my enemies. That's not going to help. Look in the mirror. That's the best place to look and start building on your competencies, capabilities. Hire somebody, talk to your organization if they have a leadership coaching program. See how you can make the necessary changes so that you can be promoted. There is something that you're missing, and you need to open that door for yourself. That's that was beautifully said. So, with that said, this was another talk in the Leadership Talk series. Thank you to Sepideh for being our guest. Those of you who have registered for the Zooms, we will communicate to our others events as they happen, and we are going to give you one gift. And the gift is that this session, when you watch it, it will bring up, if you're in can relate to it, will bring up a lot of thoughts, emotions. And my invitation to you is that sit with what comes to you. If you need to make a change, build an intention for yourself. And tomorrow we'll send you an email with a white paper on building intentions and the role of intentions in leadership that you can use as you reflect upon these, and you come up with some actions that you can take to move you closer to wherever it is that you desire to be. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Sabita John. And we'll see everybody in another event.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Thank you.
Bye bye.
you. Bye bye now.